Hello everybody. So let's talk about inheritance. So in Java, there is the concept of inheritance where you can have a class that can inherit the attributes and methods of another class. Okay. So for example, let's look at our example, our running example that we have been using, which is the user. So you have a user class. Let's say we create another class and we call it, say, for example, the student class. Student class. Okay. So now I created a student class. I want this student class to inherit all the methods and parameters that are attributes that are declared by the user class. All what I have to do is say extends user. So now, because it extends user, this means that whenever you create a student, you also have to create a user, right? And to do that, you need to create a constructor for the student that actually takes into consideration the user. We'll come to this in a little bit, right? So let's say that student has also its own parameters, and it will inherit the parameters that are exposed by the user class. And basically, for example, let's say the user, we give him some parameter. Let's say, for example, a string, which is the department, and maybe the ID, the student ID, right? So basically now this user has department and student ID. So let's create a constructor. All I need to do is just create code and then I generate, right? So basically what I want to generate is I will generate a constructor. And basically I'm going to generate a constructor for the student, right? But keep in mind that you also have to construct the user. So basically, if you look here at the user class, the user has one constructor which requires an age and a name. Because you inherit from the user, whenever you create a student, you also have to create a user. And to create the user, you need the name and age. And to instantiate the parent, so basically there is the parent of the student is the user. So basically there is a parent-child relationship. So the parent is the user, the child is the student. So whenever you create a child, you also have to create the parent. And to create the parent, use the super. And then whenever you want to refer to the parent, you just use super. And then we are calling here the constructor of the user. So this is the user constructor. This is the user constructor, right? Now, when you look here, these are the parameters for the student, which is they are parameters that are related to the student, right? Just like department and department ID. So we created a constructor for the student. What we could do also is here, we can create a toString. So basically I could go here, code, generate, and basically I want to create a toString. And basically I could say the toString, I want to print both the user. You could see here there is an inheritance relationship, so you have access to all these parameters. Just click on OK, and basically it's going to print everything related to the student. Now the beauty of this inheritance is that the student inherited what? Inherited the age and the name, right? Also it inherits the methods. So for example, if you go here, if we run this, let's say we go back to the main, let's create, so this was the user example. Let's create a student. For example, say student equals new student, and basically the student requires an age. Let's say the age is 25, and requires the name of the person, which is Bob, requires another the department, and then another string, which is the ID. So that becomes the user, the student, and let's say the department is, let's say, HR. This person is in this, or this is a student. So basically, let's make the student in the CS department, and then the ID is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's the ID of the user. Now, if we do toString, let's say we do s out and we do student, it's going to print out the student. So basically, run it here, and here we go. That's the student. Now, the nice thing about it is that the student inherited a method. So, for example, we know that there is increment. You see that? Increment age, even though in the student class we never declared the increment age method, but the decrement age method is declared in the user class, which is which is the parent of the student class. So the student class inherits methods and parameters from the user class. So if you go back here, you could say increment by age, and let's say we increment the age by 10, and then the same story here. If we print the student again, you will see that this age will be incremented. So when you run this, here it is. You see that it started at 25 and now it's 35. So now this is the inheritance demonstration of a parent-child relationship, or inheritance of methods and attributes, the inheritance between these classes. Another thing to consider is that not everything in the user class could be inherited. For example, if you declare a method as private, let's say this method we declare it as private, right? So basically private methods and attributes will not be shared. So basically if you go here, and if in the student, so you see here in the user class, there are two increment age. One of them has two parameters and one of them has one parameter. In the two parameter case, we have made it public, and in the one parameter case we made it private. So if you go back to the main, right, and if we try to do student dot increment age, you see that only one of them is visible, the one that is public. So if you go here in the user, the one that is private is not visible anymore, right? So the one that is private is not visible anymore. If you make it public and you go back to the main class and you say student dot increment age, you could see that both of them are visible. Okay, so that gives you an idea of now if inside the student class you want to refer to any of the methods, you could say you could just say increment age, you can find it, or you could say super dot increment age, and it gets you the increment age value method. So that was a quick introduction to extending a class or inheritance in Java. That is very important in software development and mainly object-oriented development. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.